To the apocalypse, ladies and gentlemen. Bug out bags and bugging out in general, that entire idea. And no, I'm not switching the channel. I'm not going to switch everything. The content's not going to be all about this kind of stuff now, clearly. If that were the case, I would be dragging out shit and showing you all the crap I have, and I would have been doing it all along. Just because I don't think, or I really, really don't think, because it's very strongly I don't believe, that we're going to have this, that we're going to have a bunch of infighting amongst ourselves, Civil War style, here where I'm at, that it's going to get here and happen here and any of that. I don't think that will. I absolutely don't believe that will. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to be prepared anyway. If you can be, why wouldn't you be? It's just like a lot of other things. It's better to have it and never need it than to need it and get caught without it. The term, or the whole theme, bug out, it doesn't resonate with me, so I don't consider what I have, my bag, as a bug out bag. It's more of just a go bag, which it's kind of the same thing, except my bag is kind of sort of a cross between what you might consider your bug out bag and a 3-day assault bag, a 3-day assault pack. It's kind of a cross between those two things. And the thing about the MRIs is I can stick 3 or 4 of them in my bag. And they're pretty dense. If I had to get by on one of those a day, alongside of snacks and other small things that I have in my bag, supplements that I have in my bag that I can mix up, I can get by with that. I can survive with that if I had to. And I would expect that if things went really unexpectedly poorly, that by 3 days' time I could see where things are heading. I can read the writing on the wall if it got that far in, and by the end of the 3 days I would be well situated enough with the provisions in my pack that the resources I've exhausted from within that pack, I would be able to replace those with naturally available resources in the environment around me, with some of the items and tools and implements that are in my pack. I would figure that after 3 days, if I exhausted my food in 3 or 4 days, I'm going to be able to eat. I'm still going to, we have a lot of wildlife. It's abundant, plant and vegetative life. A lot of that. I'm still going to get by. I'm still going to eat. So the thing about bugging out, that whole idea, I don't feel that you're going to be better resourced anywhere but at home. I think, you're not going to be better off as far as resources go than what you have available at home. If you have more resources and better resources available at a secondary location, then why aren't you living there? What are you living your life at someplace that's second best for? So the whole bugging out idea that you're going to leave the security of your home with its walls and just everything you've managed to acquire and stockpile there, that you're going to leave that, all those conveniences, and the psychological benefit of having a home team advantage thing. You're going to just leave your home and you're going to go out and go to this other location, if you have another location to go to. And if you don't have another location to go to, I think I said it in the other, maybe I didn't, but there are some occasions when, you should bug out. If you're on the X, if it gets hot enough for you and you have to make that decision on a case-by-case basis yourself, then you should bug out. If there's a natural emergency coming, there's a tornado coming, there's a wildfire burning, raging, destroying, the wind's blowing your way and it's coming, you should probably bug out The levee breaks, it's a flood, you should probably bug out. So there's a lot of reasons you should bug out. So I'm not saying there's never a reason or it's never wise to bug out. I'm just saying that should really almost be a last alternative, last choice. Your security-wise, I would say that if you were facing some type of an invading force, you're going to have, I would believe, your odds would be better at home than they're going to be on the try to defend yourself on the road in a vehicle, or try to defend yourself on foot. I think you're going to be better off at home. And having said that, the real aspect is that you need to consider is that house is not bullet resistant very much at all. In fact, the newer the house is, the more, the greater the surety that it's going to be penetrated. Those walls are not going to protect you. It's going to look like a piece of Swiss cheese if somebody's really determined. You're not going to stop rifle rounds, so you're not going to stop any high velocity round from coming through the wall into the interior of the house, unless you have a stone house or a brick house or something like this. And your odds may be a little bit better if it's not stone or brick, if it's at least an old house. I know that some of the oak in this house here, this house is over 100 years old. It's 120 years old or so, 121 years old. Some of the oak in that house is so hard, it's unbelievable. You can't drive a nail in it. But if you really are thinking that it's going to come to that, and you really believe that, and it's going to be civil war, and you're going to be defending the home front, the homestead, then have you considered what you're going to use for cover? Not concealment. Concealment and cover are two different things, Those walls are going to conceal you, but they're no good for cover. It's like a car. It's just like a car. Good. It's okay for cover, but for concealment. Excuse me, Jesus. It's okay for concealment, but it isn't really worth a shit for cover. Well, now this house, at least the bottom half is all stone. So, I would go to the basement. I would go downstairs. Well, it's actually the ground floor from the front. I would go down to the ground floor because that's all stone and it's thick and it's hard. You're not gonna punch through that. Not with small arms, certainly, and not with rifle fire either. Then you still have windows and entry points that are not stone. You have to be mindful of that. Anyway, I think that the whole idea about bugging out, I think that you should probably be provisioned for that in case it happened. If you can do that, if you can afford to do that or manage to achieve that you're covered in that regard, then that's good. One is none and two is one. So if it's better to have and not need than need and not have. So what's in your bug out bag? What's in your bug out bag? Furthermore, what's in your provisions at home? Well, just bear in mind the rule of three. Just basic stuff that you can survive for 3 minutes, average, before you black out without breathable air or submerged in ice water, freezing water. You can survive 3 days or 3 hours in a really harsh environment, 3 hours in a super harsh environment if you can't get warm, can't stay warm. 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. So that's, just keep that in mind. It makes it a little bit easier to remember. It's not something that, I know I need hydration, so that's high on the list. Water is a priority. You've got to have water. If you, I think it's very wise if you really think that there's going to be a problem and a challenge for you to get water, then I think it's important that you have a means to filtrate and clean water enough that you're going to be able to ingest it. And I use the regular tablets that the Army uses. I use the same tablets the Army uses. That's what I have. Surplus. And they work really well as far as I'm concerned. They work really well. I also have some iodine. Keep that as a backup, so that's in my pack too. Primarily I would use the tablets, and I also have a life straw. So, and I carry water. I can carry, have the ability to carry about 3 liters on me, a little bit more than that. So, that's where that lies. It's just something to consider. Now, you can clean water with other things, household items. You can clean water with bleach. There are other ways you can clean water and make it potable. I like some of these other methods because they actually even, and you can filter your water as well. You could pour it through and give it, even if you don't have any kind of commercial or military surplus type of, or emergency survival type of filters, you can still filter it even through, a handkerchief or through a bandana or whatever you've got. Coffee filter, whatever you've got to get some particles out of it. On top of, as far as microbacterial types of things that you can eliminate from the water with bleach or with iodine or with these the little military tablets that you can drop in the water and clean the water up. And then you would still have to filter it. I still would filter it anyway, or a life straw. So there's a number of ways you can clean your water, but that's something to think about. I mean, a lot of people go right to the, they go right to that, and they got that covered because that's the cool and fun and manly stuff to go shopping for and to play with. But all these other things, you're going to need water more than you're going to need that. Most, 99.9% of the time, water is going to be more important than that right up front. You can have all of that in the world. If you don't have water and you can't get water, don't have the ability to clean water, something's going to take you out that's in the water you ingested. If it wasn't out of a well that's reliable, or if it wasn't already known potable water, And then that brings you to things that could easily take you out in a situation like that. What do you have for first aid? What kind of provisions did you put away for that? First aid is much, much more of an issue with that type of situation when you consider something like that than it is just a day-to-day basis in regular life. It is to me. I don't really have much need for first aid materials or kit or whatever, or an IFAC, individual first aid kit. In my day-to-day life, I just don't. But in a situation we're considering end of the world, shit hit the fan, zombie apocalypse, whatever have you, then it becomes important. If you're outdoors and you're trying to survive, you're going to cut your fingers up, you're going to get small injuries and cuts, you're going to get chafing and scrapes, and you're going to get sore from maybe your boots, from all the hiking, which you're not accustomed to maybe, or from whatever you're wearing. If you're wearing armor, rubbing. Maybe it's rubbing a zipper in your combat shirt if you have one, or if, depending on what kind of gear you have that you're not normally accustomed, to rocking around or to wearing and moving day to day, all day in. A sling, cutting into you, straps from a backpack, rucksack, whatever have you. There's all kind of things. And the problem in a situation like that is you want to nip that in the bud. You don't want to end up to where you're going to initiate any kind of thing that has the potential to end game become septic, or to get to where even if you have antibiotics put aside. I mean, most people haven't prepared that far. But if it gets so far, if you let it get ahead of you and you end up to the point where you're becoming septic, now you're talking about intravenous antibiotics, and that's, what are you going to do? So you could literally be taken out from some kind of initially small, underestimated type of injury that's like seemingly nothing. But if you're outside and you're getting dirty and you're getting sweaty and all this other stuff, it could happen. It could happen. So, if you're not down with what I'm saying now, then you're way behind the eight ball. Doesn't mean that you don't have a chance. It just means, you could be one of the most unprepared guys amongst us, and you be the guy to walk out of that. You know what I mean? You just don't know. You just don't know. But the more prepared I am because I just don't know, then the better off I think my odds are. And I see my card's almost full, so let me clear something off and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I can see this is getting a little long, so I'll try to wrap it up for you guys. The other thing I want to say about your first aid provisions is, what are you expecting to encounter? If you have what you would call a bug out bag, and you're planning and things are going to be so bad, you're going to leave your home and you're going to go out and try and make it outside where all the shit's going down. What kind of injuries are you prepared to deal with? What kind of injuries you may potentially experience? You might get attacked. Is that part of it? Why else would you leave your house? You're trying to protect your life, save your life, defend your life, preserve your life. From what? Could you experience a gunshot wound? Could you experience a fairly serious laceration? Are you prepared to treat these things if the ability isn't there to use 911 and somebody to respond? Are you prepared? Because something that could very easily be dealt with by EMTs or some kind of a dedicated medical response team. But if you take all that out of the game and you're left to your own devices, if someone in your family is bleeding and you can't stop bleeding, I would really encourage you, if you're not familiar with the phrase "stop the bleed," I would highly encourage you to search that phrase out. There's a lot of information on YouTube. There's one kid, I don't mean any disrespect, he's awesome, he's a grown man. I refer to him as a kid because he's so much younger than myself. But he's an extremely knowledgeable young man, and his name is The Skinny Medic, and that's his channel. And he really explains things very clearly and concisely. And the whole stop the bleed thing is just what it says, that the primary aspect to that triage mentality is you have to stop the bleeding. Once you're out of red blood cells and we can't replace them, you bleed out because of that, because you don't have any more oxygen being transported anywhere in your body. Which is what the red blood cells do. I mean, when you bleed out, it's not because you just completely are evacuated of all the blood in your body. It's once you cross a threshold where you've lost enough red blood cells and they can't be replaced or aren't being replaced, you can't transport oxygen. The oxygen levels in your body, you bleed out and you succumb to that condition, and it's over with for you or a loved one because you couldn't stop the bleed. So obviously, especially for all of us who are not, like day in and day out EMTs or doctors or anybody that deals with this kind of trauma and triage, you're going to want a tourniquet. I like the CAT tourniquets. I like those. And again, one is none and two is one, because there may be a case where you can't stop the bleed with one tourniquet for whatever reason. So maybe you need to apply a second tourniquet. And, that tourniquet could stay on there. Again, let me just disclaim, I'm not a medical professional. I don't have any background or authority to give you medical advice. However, it's understood and known in this day and age, especially in combat settings, that tourniquets work. Tourniquets save lives, and a tourniquet can safely be left on for 2 hours or so, and you're not going to lose that limb over that. There have been cases, many cases, where in the field, tourniquets have been left on 5 hours, 6 hours, without the loss of a limb. So, and in this case, if you can stop the bleed in another fashion, you could apply a tourniquet. I'm not going to get into all this because it's way too complicated and way beyond the scope of this little video, and this is already getting too long. But you could apply a tourniquet and hopefully stop the bleeding to where you don't have a pulse if it's the injury here or whatever have you, and you place a tourniquet high enough up, stop the bleed, and then it's a whole other issue you get into. You got to be able to see what's bleeding. If it's just bleeding, then there's one school of thought says, in the field like that, in a triage situation, a battle situation, that you want to put the tourniquet as high as possible, just in case there's, other sources of blood loss that you haven't recognized or haven't identified. So you really need to get down to the skin so you can see what is bleeding. But you could put a tourniquet on and address the injury. You could pack it with combat gauze or, quick clot. Google these things if you don't know. Most of you guys probably know. Any of these kind of things. And once you pack that wound or whatever you do, and if you can get it under control, then you may be able to start to loosen the tourniquet and see, and wrap it with pressure bandage or whatever, and then loosen the tourniquet. So it's not like, if you don't feel good or comfortable or warm and fuzzy about leaving a tourniquet on that long, because where are you going with this person? Who will be the next to see them? You know what I mean? So it's a mess. It's a hell of a mess. That aspect of it would be almost like 1863, where infection and things are going to take a lot of people out. Sepsis can take a lot of people out. If I don't believe that's going to happen. I don't believe we'll be in a situation where we're going to lose all of these resources. I don't believe you'll be in a situation where hospitals just could be overwhelmed or even not even functioning, or I don't, in certain areas. I don't think it'll go to that. I don't see that. But it doesn't hurt to learn a little and to be a little prepared. And then it can get a lot more complicated. Like, what do you do for, an injury, gunshot wound to the chest or whatever have you, or to the abdomen where you can't pack it. What do you do there, right? And you would get into chest seals and shit like this, and you may need 2 chest seals if you have a through wound or whatever. But we're not here to get into all that. I'm just saying there's a lot of aspects to this that when people start talking about bug out bags, and everybody's very fashionable almost that people have a bug out bag of some sort of another, but you have to consider what you're bugging out from. What are you trying to avoid? And what if you don't avoid it successfully and you scrape up against it? You're going to have to be able to treat yourself, or maybe a loved one, or whatever have you. So that's a whole other aspect to the situation or scenario that many people maybe haven't given enough due thought to. Maybe, so anyway, that's just a little bit of it. It's a big topic. hugely involved. You could really go down the rabbit hole with it. But if you think things are going to be bad enough that you're going to have to bug out and there's going to be a real civil war, then these are real issues as well. They're equally as pressing as just that something so bad you have to leave your home and live out of whatever you can carry on your back. If it gets to that situation, then you're going to need to have at least an individual first aid kit, and or you're going to have and the ability to be able to utilize what's in it. And if you're alone, you're going to have to do it yourself, or if there's nobody there that's going to be able to deal with it. So it's a lot to think about. It's a lot more than just buying and thinking that, and the bug out bag and thinking that you're going to be that guy. Maybe you are, but there's all these other many, many facets, multifaceted topic here. There's a lot more that goes along with it. And that's all I'm trying to do in this video, is just point some of these things out. Again, I don't think it's going to go that far. I'm certainly not trying to talk doom and gloom. I honestly do not feel it'll go that far. I really think that we're already basically in more or less a civil war type of scenario right now, but it's a different kind of civil war. It's a soft civil war. I mean, I know it doesn't look that way, and for some people it's not that soft. There's people that are going to be victimized, but it looks like it's an internal government thing, and a lot of it's playing out in the streets. But again, right now, it's absolutely nowhere near anything that our government can't handle. It's nowhere near anything that our government can't completely mop up, very easily. So anyway, that's what it is. You guys take care. Have yourselves an awesome evening, and I'll talk to you again soon. Keep those comments coming. I'm going to go in right now as I load this and read the comments from last night and see what I might address. Have a great evening.